Thank you, Chavi. I'm just going to try and sort of pull this together in terms of what I see as the underlying issue that we're dealing with. So this is Dharmaraj. He's a 10-year-old boy that I met in a small village outside Kanyakumari. He comes from a caste that's called Arundhatiyar, which is among the Dalits. They're the Dalits among the Dalits. Dharmaraj, in some senses, is the beneficiary of all the good things that have happened in India over the last 60 years. Government initiatives, NGOs, private sector, opportunities, all of that. So he's in school, his family has a home, they have benefited from a number of different schemes. At the time that I met him, he was just recovering from an attack where the backstory was his mother sent him off to check whether the ration shop was open. He got on his bicycle, went down to the market, encountered 3 older boys from a middle caste who thought it was inappropriate that a Dalit boy should be riding a bicycle. And so they pulled him off his bike, tied him to the back of it, and dragged him around that village. For me, Dharmaraj, in some senses, represents the bit that we haven't been able to do in India, to fix the essential rule of law, of governance, of a systemic approach to sorting this out. We shouldn't, Dharmaraj should not have been dependent on that NGO or that individual to get him justice, which fortunately he was able to get. Civil society, if I'm going to call it that, has become a phrase that's become fairly popular since the India Against Corruption movement found its feet. But technically, we define it as the area outside the family, market, and state where people organize to pursue their shared goals and ideals. And historically, this has typically included NGOs, social movements, labor groups, cooperatives, faith-based groups, and grassroots and neighborhoods associations. More recently, it includes social enterprises, public-private partnerships, big philanthropy, and the way I see things like India Against Corruption, which is political enterprise. For me, it's a much simpler definition. The reason we need civil society is because democracy has to be more than 2 wolves and a sheep voting on what to have for dinner. And that's the democracy we have right now. 2 wolves and a sheep get together once every 5 years and determine what the rest of us, what they're going to have for dinner. Civil society, we don't think about it. We think quite often of our cause, our NGO, the child we want to help, the women's group we want to support. But it has a multiplicity of functions that it needs to serve in a healthy democracy. It is, of course, a provider of services where government fails to provide them. It is, of course, a watchdog of government and to ensure that government does what it's supposed to be doing and that business does what it's supposed to be doing. It is, of course, an advocate for voices that are relatively marginalized or silenced, but it is much less well known as an innovator. Almost every brilliant scheme that you can think of that has saved millions of lives around the world was originally incubated as a tiny little idea by some NGO somewhere. It's a standard setter. The idea of norms, the idea of what are appropriate rules by which society is going to govern itself. And it is a convener, which is bringing together diverse groups of people. Civil society in India is huge. There's 3.3 million NGOs, we're told. In China, it's growing rapidly. They're already at 500,000, and I'm sure it'll only take them a few years before they overtake us. What's happened over the last decade to civil society, many people talked about the way 9/11 affected business. But what we call the year of the towers, 2001, really introduced the security state, which gave governments around the world the license to constrain freedom of expression, freedom of association, freedom of assembly. And our government was no different. You added then the financial crisis, which took away global governance altogether. The US, Europe are now out to lunch. The emerging countries are not yet ready to play their part in global governance. And so it shifted for civil society. It took away resources, it shifted our priorities, it opened up new constituencies, and most importantly, it eroded trust in institutions across the board. The benefits of it is really that it's opened up a debate. We now challenge the economic paradigm and the norms. We talk about climate change and sustainability. And finally, in 2011, from the year of the towers to the year of the squares, if you will, we finally saw that the power of the crowd, when it was married to the power of the cloud, could do amazing things. And that's inspired political entrepreneurs around the world to take action. India no less. But it's also triggered the backlash, which is much more repression, much more surveillance, the criminalization of dissent, the suppression of protest. Where we are right now, and where I want to really leave this with you is, yes, you must make room in your hearts and in your wallets for the here and now, for the children, the women, the disabled, the elderly, the sick, the whatever that need your help here and now. But you need to go beyond that as individuals, as organizations, as institutions. You need to be supporting organizations like the ones you see up here that are doing that systemic work of building a healthier, more vibrant democracy, who are improving standards of governance, and who are protecting civil society. Thank you. But to sort of try and get a little of your personal stories, and even though we agreed not to personalize this, if you just tell us, each of you, what was it that drew you to this particular kind of work?
You know, Sanjay Thapar will vouch and S. Ganesh will vouch that we used to love Amitabh Bachchan, who was an angry young man. And for some reason, when we were in college, he became a hero, although I don't consider him a hero now. I am an angry middle-aged man now, and I was hopping mad that why the hell is our country going down the drain, and don't get mad, get even. So let's do something about it. So that's the basic motivation.
Nitin.
You know, I long felt that India is at a state today what the United States was exactly 100 years ago. They had huge amounts of corruption, they had huge amounts of growth, they had huge amounts of inward-looking politicians, venality, social problems, all of a nature which are very similar to what India has today. And then in 100 years, they arrived at where they are today. And we have that same opportunity. The question always was, who's going to do it? Someone's got to do it. Yeah, we probably can do it faster, but someone's got to do it. Someone's got to go out and do it. So, you know, whenever we talk to people, friends around you, say, someone's got to do it. So I said, okay, you know, I'm foolish enough to be that someone, so let's just jump in and do it.
And we're glad you did. Chavi, your mic's probably working, so that's...
What got me here were the villages. I've been going to my village since I was born. But the reason I agreed was because I had seen that in spite of funding in the name of rural development having increased, the scenario in my village alone was getting from bad to worse. And that's where I thought that, as we know, there's a disconnect, clearly. So I thought that by taking up this role, I would play the role of being a facilitator, bridge the gap between the government and the village, as well as the private sector and the village, in the hope that if I'm able to garner the support, then we could create a model village and then replicate the work done in this village to other villages. Sadly, the government, unfortunately, be the bureaucracy or the elected representatives, do not really trust you that much. Of course, can't blame them for that, because everybody thinks you're coming with an agenda. So even though I'm saying, here I am trying to do something for the village, not just mine, but even the cluster or the district, and I usually tell the DM, the collector who heads the district, that you take the credit for it. You say you're the one who's steering it. In spite of that, even very young collectors have not really come forward to try and initiate the work of development. There is what I sense a distrust within the system. And often, even politicians, I get the feeling, who do want to do some good, often are left prisoners to bureaucrats, and the bureaucrats are left prisoners to other bureaucrats. And that's why I think we need a systemic change, which is doable. All that really is needed is greater transparency and accountability. And unless and until more people like us don't come together and voice the issues. The sad part in India is that even within the country, a lot of people do not know what the grassroots reality is. So all I'm trying to do is project the reality and hope that more people, like-minded people, will come together and we can collectively voice those issues and create the bottom-up approach that is needed, ensuring that the villagers continue to be the key stakeholders in whatever development program that the system or the government decides to have for the nation.
Thank you. I think the stakes are really high right now for India. I think we have at an inflection point in more ways than one. I think we have the opportunity to not just change the lives, transform the lives of a few 100 million people, but we have the opportunity to play a role in the world that could be beneficial for the rest of the world as well. But it's going to take, please.
See, I wanted to, it's kind of hard to compress 15 years of work of thousands of people in 8 minutes. But one thought I would leave you with, please visit our website. We have not only India's, but the world's largest web, database on every politician who ever contested not the Sarpanch elections, but the MLA and MP. So you can find any politician and get the data on him. Please go and visit our website. But no, so we need now, we need two kinds of vitamins. One is vitamin M, which is money, and we need the other thing that all of you have, which is the brain power, and which Nitin is also fully endowed with. We need people to look at that data, analyze it, do data analytics, whatever it is, please contact us. The other thing we have done is perhaps the world's largest survey. I think Gallup does 25,000 people. We did 250,000 people survey in India, and we are asking a simple question. And that's the paradigm shift I wanted to mention. See, who decides how India should run? Earlier it was the socialists and the bureaucrats. Now we have the crony capitalists deciding it. We have all kinds of economists deciding it. And everybody thinks they know how to run the country. But whose money is it? That 18 lakh crores, whose money is it? It is the money of the people of India. So we asked a simple question to the people of India. What are your priorities and expectations from the government? And how do you rate the government's performance? So please look at our data, and just, I think since the people of India's voice is important, I'll just reel off what the #1 priority for the people of India across the country is jobs. People want jobs, they don't want doles. They want basic essential services, pani, bijli, sadak, shiksha, swasth. They want law and order and security for women. Interesting thing is both men and women are equally interested in security and law and order for women. And the poor are certainly interested in access to food, and also the whole issue of price rise, mehengai. So these are what people of India want. If you go and many of you are great financial experts, look at how the budgets are being allocated, whether they reflect the priorities of the people of India. We need intellectual firepower to ensure that what people's money is and what people want from their money is what the government does. And that's the other new direction in which, or new frontier that we have opened up.
So underpinning every gap in India, from the fiscal gaps to the other crises we're dealing, is the governance gap. And I think there's enough intellectual firepower in this room to address that more than adequately. Thank you.
And to wrap up the session, I just have one statement to make, addressed to all of you. I want to say, Chavi, avoid the brick bats and stay bubbly like your village. Nitin trained people so well that pai ka hisab mile. And Professor Shastri, getting even doesn't make you odd. And finally, Ingrid, we need you to break the gridlock that's affecting the establishment of civil society in many places in India. Thank you very much. A small token of our appreciation.